Today we are jumping into our session number 3 of In the Lab with Alchemy, and I'm excited. We're going to be talking about EUC and VDI, and we got a special guest on, our friends from Omnissa, and then we got one of my favorite guests as well from the Alchemy crew, Jason Willis. So I'm excited to jump in today and talk about kind of the future and kind of a new path we're taking as far as Alchemy is concerned around EUC and VDI. Today's panel is a good panel, and you got myself. My name is Pete Downing. I'm the host and moderator of In the Lab. If you've been on these before, I try to keep them as lively as possible and keep it fun. So, for those who are new, welcome. We run these once a month, and we try to keep the topics fresh and keep demos as the main priority. Also on the call, we got Mr. Jason Willis. Jason, give us a little background on where you're from and how long you've been at Alchemy.
Thanks, Pete. Currently, I reside outside of Austin, Texas, down here. Been with Alchemy now almost 10 years, so we're a few months away of crossing that decade mark. But yeah, various roles here across the organization. But at the end of the day, EUC modern workspace has always been near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, I know it seems like we've been in this industry a long time. So, all right. Then also we got our guest from Nissa, Josh Tacey. Hey, give us a little background on where you're from, and then how long you've been with Omnissa. And then my question is, were you with them prior to the name change and all the fun?
Yes, I've been around since 2018.
All right.
So I've been VMware, Broadcom, Omnissa, whatever in between since 2018. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. So principal architect, field CTO here for healthcare, and yeah, looking forward to having the conversation. Always excited to talk about EUC because before that
Awesome.
I was a proud pager wearer for a good long time out in the
All right.
trenches.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, gentlemen, for taking time out of your long days to join us. I know you're busy. All right, so as we go through the day today, I really want everybody to kind of think about, look at your current EUC, VDI, even, your UEM investment, right? Your mobile management investment, your end user compute, your virtual desktop, your apps, your SaaS, everything. And just think about it in the challenges you're hitting today, and then ask yourself, how can you optimize it? And that's going to be kind of a focus of today. And then, when I send you guys some information post session, it's going to be honed in on how do you optimize and how do you streamline this thing called EUC and VDI, or just the whole smorgasbord of everything you're doing around the end user. So think about that as we go through today. And I'm going to bring in Jason, and we're going to kind of talk about two different things. And we went back and forth on how we were going to approach today. And I said, you know what, Jason, you like to talk, so I'm going to ask you a couple questions and let you tee up Josh to bring over like what you want to do and how you want to do it. So the first question, Jason, is like, hey, what is the state of EUC VDI today? What are you seeing when you talk to customers, and where does it sit? And I think Brian Madden. It's like, is it still the year of VDI?
Well, I will say this. Thanks, Pete. I will say this is that we still see VDI as still one of the profound platforms that we're going to continue to see for many years now. Most organizations today still have applications that are fueled and drive the business, right? They are the solutions that have been there for a while, and companies have really held on to those pieces, and because they are such an important part of their business. Those pieces and those solutions that we have been using for a while are still needed even as we move closer, as we move in the future. There still is a big precedence on being able to access those applications and solutions that are not truly web enabled, that haven't moved to that SaaS platform. There is still quite a bit of that today. We also find that that many organizations have a diverse delivery platform, right? It's not just like we're delivering a single Windows image anymore. There's still, now with the growth of AI and machine learning, we're seeing Linux development going out there, being able to deliver Linux-based machines, being able to access from any machine, whether that's Windows, thin client, endpoint, like those pieces are still prevalent today because so much of that the workforce out there is still running much of this technology. And because of that, we're still going to have that importance of having some type of VDI or remote app solution that still provides maximum security while still delivering the best user experience possible. And there are still many apps that are not able to run on those endpoints today natively, right, without some other type of integration or tool. So we still see VDI being in virtual app development being a huge part of many organizations for at least the next 5 to 10 years. So, yeah. So what's the differentiator that we see with Omnissa today? I will say this. I mean, one of the biggest things, and we've been a lot, and we've worked with, some of the other partners in the space for many, many years. We have been at the top of the game for a lot of these folks. And really, what do we see as the differentiator? Well, one of the first things here I see is kind of their solution, right? One of the biggest differentiators is going to be is what we've seen with Omnissa is they're not a solution that is trying to be everything to everyone. They are not trying to go out there and pick up new technologies or add in pieces, to create additional tags for their products, right? Their focus has been and has always been moving forward is how do we be the best in this VDI space? How do we be the leader and market in this space? And not trying to be things that we're not, not looking to be some other pillar within our various platforms that may or may not take off. Their importance has been to everything that they're acquiring or adding within their organization is integrated fully within their platform. They're not consuming different parts or grabbing other entities and then trying to bolt those pieces on, in any type of form or fashion. Really, their focus is to have that comprehensive space where everything is integrated into their VDI platform. First part. Secondly, I would say the other differentiator that I've seen with them that is truly unique in this space, as more and more organizations, move to the less is better type mentality, not having as big of touch points with their customers or even partners. What we've really seen with them is they kind of have that journey, that open arms methodology, whereas, hey, we want to work with you. We want to partner with you. We see the opportunities that, that are focused on not so much the dollar, but really about the product as a whole. So instead of trying to, sit here and say, oh, we're going to all these different pieces, or we have all these different solutions that we're trying to add on bolt on, or, go for different charges or pieces or whatnot, their focus really is about understanding what you're doing today, how you're delivering, what you're delivering, right? And trying to provide solutions to you that will make it more equitable for you to be able to deliver those solutions, and giving you a better user experience with a better customer support. They haven't shifted in the winds of, oh, let's talk to something or let's talk to anything, right? That has the ability to be able to converse back, right? We don't want to have some pushed off motion where we're sitting here talking to some type of bot or some type of solution, whereas they don't having that ability to be able to work with the customer, I think, is going to be a big differentiator with them. Thirdly, one of the other things that I think is going to be very impressive and something that Josh will talk about here later is their ability for their integrations. We had talked about how their solution is seamlessly put together. Well, with their intelligence and their platform, right, they have the ability to see across everything that they have access to, whether that's a physical, virtual, whether it is some type of mobile or endpoint or some of that nature, or the other part of their solutions. All of that has a single context window where they can look across all of that, all of those pieces in real time to be able to see what's going on in the environment, the ability to then provide options where here's how we can potentially remediate some of these solutions. So really kind of forward thinking about looking at everything as a whole, not just one thing. And then lastly, really is I've seen a big growth in them. We've been talking for some time now and throughout the partnership, and they have put and invested a lot of money into their dev program, which has enabled them to really start to open up to different directions, multiple different hypervisors, the ability to span into multiple different clouds. Their resources and their solutions really are not trying to be focused on one platform, as in most people probably had, some experience with Horizon in the past, VMware View. I think it was something desktop previously, but over the years, they've successfully migrated away from being a single platform that can only be ran on one solution. So I'm really impressed with their ability now to kind of expand out and be able to be multi-platform, multi-cloud. This is a big movement for them. For so many years, it was more of a single platform delivery. So I'm very impressed with that. And then really, I'll say this is the thing that I've really had a lot of success with is I love working with their sales team and their sales engineers. Given the fact that they are there, they are present, and they are wanting to work with customers, I would really say that is probably one of my most impressive things with many of the players in this space today, especially with the control planes. You don't always get to shake hands and meet that person who is working with you and who will work with your team moving forward. I think that ability to not just come in here, sell a solution, and then move on to the next, right? They have a complete integration with your team, and you'll be working with those people for many years. So all that is to say, I really love, their integrations, the ability to work with the customer, I mean, willingness to work with them, their intelligence platform, which I think is great, and their development, right? That hasn't changed since we started talking with them, and it only continues to expand and get better. So those are the things that I really love, and I really think help differentiate Omnissa versus some of the other players in the space.
Awesome. Well, yeah, and you've been in this space a long time. I know I have been, and it's a little secret. I used to be in product management at a company that we won't mention right now, but one of my favorite parts of being in product management was talking to customers, and I would argue that's where Omnissa is shining, is they do listen to the customers, and it's almost like you guys, Josh, are almost like a little startup almost, but yet still big. So it's kind of nice. All right, well, Josh, you're going to jump us into, and I'll stop sharing my screen.
Yep,
You're going to take us through the Horizon stack and Omnissa and all the fun that you guys are doing, but you're going to level set a little bit too, and where you guys came from and where you are now. And so
exactly. I was gonna say.
I'll let you share the screen and jump in and show and tell. So
Awesome. Well, thank you for the time, everybody. And yes, I got just a couple slides, just a quick overview, get everybody on the kind of level set and on the same page. Don't worry, demos are coming. We're gonna go play with things. It'll be a good time. So just as an overview for everybody, yes, we were used to be part of the end user compute division of VMware. Obviously, VMware was bought by Broadcom, and Broadcom then looked for strategic alternatives for our division as they wanted to focus more on the data center. So as of July 1st, we became Omnissa, a fully independent company backed by KKR. And as was just mentioned, yep, we are a big, giant startup of some sort. So, we have customers worldwide. I have many different slides that have all sorts of numbers on them, but the important part is that, yeah, KKR really helped us focus and really wants us to focus, as was mentioned, on being the best that we can be with the products and the solutions that we have, right? It's not about, how can we go out and just acquire different things to say we have them or try to be all those check boxes. It's really more about being the best we can and then partnering and integrating with other organizations that are being the best of what they can do, right? So whether that be a thin client company or XDR or, all these different kind of solutions, right? It's really about kind of bringing them all together and making cohesive outcomes, delivering on cohesive outcomes. And the other thing that's been really, really exciting for us is that previously, right, when we were part of the large organization that was VMware, we had to spend, when we made money, we had to give it to the larger business. And so that means, did EUC subsidize, say, the network security side of the house or the hypervisor side of the house? Yeah. All those dollars, R&D got spread out. But now we get to spend our money on our own R&D. And so we've really seen the pace of innovation really quicken. And obviously we have lots of customers and partners that will be, happy to speak about that as well. But that's one of the things we're really excited about, is that we get to, innovate as quickly as we want to innovate. And so that's really kind of paid dividends, even for the short time, right? We haven't even technically been an independent company for 2 years at this point, but it's already paid dividends in, both the Horizon side of the house and the Workspace ONE side. So really, just real quick, as was mentioned, right? We look at this as one platform. It is not just a series of parts that are loosely fitting together. And it's really one cohesive platform. And we look at that especially around, as was mentioned, around data, around, that intelligence platform. But because everybody has solutions that can generate just an awful amount of data, right? From all these different tools. And then you have other tools that you can dump all that data into, and then you have to be an artist in those tools for having meaningful kind of insights and outcomes to that data. So really, we look at it as a whole platform around how do I architect around data, around workflows, around the kind of that administration, and how do I make it easier for not only a lot of you guys, the administrators that are delivering these platforms, but also have it make sense for the end users, right? They should have a consistent look and feel, no matter if they're on a mobile device, if they're on a virtual endpoint or a physical endpoint, right? They should all have a cohesive experience that makes sense and just somewhat intuitive, kind of around that. So, that's really kind of how we view the world. And I'll get into some of the stuff around, the workflows, around what we're doing with AI and machine learning, because we know that's very much a hot topic. But really just kind of wanted to say that these were kind of the major pillars of our platform and how we tie them all kind of cohesively kind of together. And so with that, we can kind of jump into the fun part of just kind of really showing off what we talk about when we start to talk about data, especially around things like Horizon. Promise I know how to use Zoom. All right, so this is our intelligent platform, and really I show this one off because this is what I call the executive dashboard that everybody wants to see, right? They want to put this on some really big TV in the network operations center and be able to go, my world is green, everything is good, everything is really operating how we expect it to. But as I look at it as an administrator and as an architect, like, this is all good stuff, right? That's really interesting. But it doesn't tell me how my end users are doing. It's very much a data center centric view of the world. And so that's really where we get into the other side of the house around experience. And so, as I said, whether you're doing physical devices, right, we can dive into all this kind of stuff of UEM managed devices, whether it be Windows, whether it be Mac, whether it be iOS, Android, all this stuff. How are my physical devices doing? But really it's about, and you can see, apparently my virtual experience is not very good the past 7 days. And so it's all about, how do I take this data, right? All this correlated data and start to make sense of it, right? If I'm a help desk, how can I leverage all of this data? How do I make it make sense? And so what's important, as we start to look at stuff, and we found that these types of timelines are super, super incredibly important, right? Very useful. It's, how do I start breaking it down? How do I start looking at all this pile and pile of data to really figure out where my end user performance is impacted, whether that be all the way down to a session, right? Like what we're looking at right now, or we can bring it all the way up to like, how's my overall environment really looking? Right? And can I take action on that? And can I automate these pieces? Can I start to have the data alert me instead of doing what our end users are ever so good at, which is telling us when there's a problem, right? Calling the service desk. How do I prevent that? Or at least how do I get ahead of that, right? Because we see time and time again, organizations, especially engineering teams and end user experience teams, you guys aren't getting any more people. You're having more and more platforms, more and more things to deal with. And it's just, something's got to give. And so that's really where we kind of look at this and say, okay, is this data actionable? Can I do something about it? Does it tell me something? That's really our goal. Is I want to tell you something with our platform, not just, again, just give you a fire hose worth of data, right? And so that's where these experience stores come in. And when I mentioned or was mentioned around also integrations and that kind of stuff, we have other partners, whether they be in the XDR space or in the thin client space, that can plug into intelligence and give you kind of that single pane of glass, right? So you could see if you start to see like your XDR is like, oh, it was doing a scan, or it was detecting something, or it did an update, or on the thin client side, you could see like, oh, the USB devices, all the way down to like virtual or USB devices used in virtual sessions, all the way down to, oh, we can see on this particular endpoint that this virtual device is being disconnected and reconnected. And it's just constantly flickering. And so that could obviously be a problem if a user calls up and is like, hey, this device isn't working as well as we would hope it to. And so bringing all of that data kind of into that single view of, as I said, whether you're on a physical side of the house or also the virtual side of the house, and that includes my folks that are doing, applications, both published applications and within the actual virtual desktops, right? Here's a shock, which I'm sure is shocking to everyone, that Google Chrome is having a performance issue. I have no idea anything about tabs eating all of the memory ever. That's, new and shocking to everybody. So you can then drill down and you can kind of see all this stuff. And as I said, then what we do is people say, okay, that's great. You have all this data and that's fantastic. Then what cool stuff can I do with this data? And that's where we do, apply things like AI. And, I have to stay the standard caveat of this is a live demo. So I am going to say stuff to the AI and we'll see what we get back. Right. But it's really about how, and this is an administrator, right? This is your view of it. So I can say like in the past 7 days, login time, right? It can, do all this stuff for me. So I'm not just hunting and pecking or trying to create a report or that kind of stuff. Like it's really designed for, I can just ask it questions and have it give me insightful data without me having to know really how to do anything within this, almost within the intelligence platform. I mean, obviously the more you know about it, the more powerful it can be, but it's really just, can I get stuff out of the system without me being an expert in it, right? We see this in a lot of other tools where I need to be an expert in all this stuff for it to make sense. But okay, great. So it's been the last, and then I can ask it for, have it break down that data for me as to, what are my different login segments? And we can, please note, this is not pre-canned. I am just writing these queries as we do this to just give you the real kind of experience that, on our platform. Because a little bit about my background is, right, I come from, before I was talking to customers about all of this technology, I come from the kind of the delivery organization. So I'm a big fan of showing you things that are here in the real world and how they really work, because that's the best way to show it. And so, yeah, you can see all these different stages. If we wanted to then, dive into way zoom, thank you. You could also, dive into these different sessions and all these different experiences and all this other kind of fun stuff. And it just really breaks it down into all the different things that you can do. Right. And this is where you can see kind of the different phases around GPO loads and things of that. Like we can get if you have a really long GPO time, we can actually even get down to the individual GPOs where you can see the individual GPOs and how long they take. A lot of my customers that are really just starting to adopt this kind of stuff, as you said, right? One of the biggest things we're seeing is that, yeah, okay, great. You do published applications, you do desktops, you do managed devices and that kind of stuff. But it's not, that's almost table stakes at this point. It's as they get used to more comfortable with the data-driven platform, they're seeing a lot of insights and a lot of information that they probably they knew were always kind of in the background, but they weren't able to articulate it up the food chain to really demonstrate kind of, oh, we have GPO problems and this is what it's causing, or oh, we have this extra application that's starting up every single time and is impacting logins or impacting that kind of stuff. And so being able to kind of drill down into every single one of these different phases and when these things are happening becomes very, very powerful data that we're seeing customers be able to really make meaningful changes into their platform and really deliver a better end user experience. So I know I've been going on for a few minutes here, so I figured I would pause to see if there's any particular questions or kind of, if anybody has any specific things that they were really top of mind for them. I want to make
So
sure that
yeah,
these
no,
demos
no,
are good.
yeah, no questions yet. But again, I'll encourage the audience to ask anything about, you know, the VDI stack, anything, because Josh can answer. I won't say anything, but you know a lot about a lot, so I'll kind of leave the open ended there. And if you have any questions, just even about the VDI side or UEM side, please ask. I guess I'll warm up the audience a little bit, but what I'm seeing here is there's like you guys are really honing in on this one platform mentality, right? So yes, I can deploy a VDI session with you all. Yes, I can deploy a virtual app, and I would argue our audience is probably well versed in those two areas. What I'm seeing here is you guys could essentially be a one platform to see everything from the deployment all the way over to the usability to if a user is having a bad experience. And so is that just do you see a consolidation in the future around tool
Yeah.
stacks? So
Yeah, I have a lot of conversations around with our customers around how do we consolidate, right? We have all these different tools, but I don't want to consolidate, but then compromise on either features or experience or that kind of stuff. And that's really our viewpoint of consolidation without compromise is I don't want to take stuff away from you, right? I go to customers all the time and who are in love with very specific tools. And listen, at the end of the day, if you are in love with a very specific tool and you are using every single feature of it, I want to meet you where you're at, right? I'm not going to come in and say you must on day zero adopt every single piece of our platform, or otherwise it's useful. Or sorry, it's useless. That's not kind of our discussion with customers. It's all around where are you today? How do I meet you where you are today? But then how do I incrementally improve, as you adopt more and more parts of our platform to deliver more value with it, right? Because as you said, Pete, right? I'm sure a lot of you guys could deploy a desktop or deploy an application, either virtual or some of you even physically could do it in your sleep, right? This is stuff we've all been doing for a good long time. But it's about how do I make it simpler? How do I give you a single platform so that it's not, oh, I do it this way, and this way on this thing. And then not only that, but as we said, really drive data, drive insights into it. Again, across all those different endpoint platforms. So that's it. Yeah, that's really our goal around our one platform kind of vision and view is consolidate the information, consolidate the data, consolidate the management, but not leave you missing any of those parts and features that you from those platforms you came from, right? Best of show, not just best of breed in iOS or best of breed in Android.
nice. And I know you have something to talk about on this front, so I'll ask it because I'm guessing people are thinking it like,
Sure.
you guys came from VMware, and so is it fair to say that people think you still only work on Horizon, right? So the question is how agnostic are you guys now as far as platform underneath?
I have a slide for that, so I will happily talk about that. And so yes, this question does obviously come up quite a lot. And what we tell people is vSphere going away anytime soon? Probably not. That being said, back in the day, VMware kind of really had that discussion on we want to run your workloads anywhere, right? The same kind of one platform story. Our viewpoint is that we want to actually deliver on it, right? I want to look at the various different hypervisors, whether they be hyperscalers or on premise, as just a place to run workload, right? So as you can see, we support all of these different kind of hypervisors in one way or another. And at the top, you see our Horizon 8. That's the very traditional like on-prem, running it in a data center kind of view of the world is Horizon 8. And then we have our Horizon Cloud platform, which leverages all the same technologies. It leverages all the same stuff under the hood. You still get app volumes. You still get Dynamic Environment Manager, the Blast protocol, all that, the same client, everything. None of that changes. It really just depends on whether you want to be cloud brokered, right? Use it as a service, or you want to kind of manage everything because you have regulatory pressures, you have data locality concerns or that kind of stuff. So these are all the different kind of hypervisors that we can use today, right? We just brought Nutanix AHV up as a first-class hypervisor. And what we mean by that is out of all these that you can run, right, especially the ones on the right, you can run manual workloads and that kind of stuff. But for those that come from an MCS, PVS background on the Citrix side, or an instant clone, linked clone, if you're a Horizon kind of person. Our first class hypervisors are really ones that can do all of that. So Nutanix can do the non-persistent clones. If you want to be up in the cloud, Azure and AWS can do non-persistent clones, right? That same kind of non-persistent look and feel, to be, destroy them when they're done with, and that has its own benefits and security. So that's really what we call. And obviously, as we march to the right, as time continues to go on, more and more of those hypervisors will be kind of those first class citizens. So you see the green line, right? We've already announced OpenShift, OpenStack this year. Will go GA for being a first class hypervisor for you to be able to do non-persistent workloads on them. And then more and more will come online as we continue to march our way to the right. And obviously, there are even more hypervisors than you can see here.
Yeah.
And that's where we do, really, Nutanix was driven by our customers, right? OpenStack was driven by our customers. This is where we encourage all of our customers, potential customers, give us that feedback. We want to know what kind of hypervisors you're looking at as you move on to a post-Broadcom world. And if the answer is we're going to continue on Broadcom, that's fantastic too. As I said, that's not going away by any stretch of the imagination. But it is really around how do we broaden our horizons? Sorry, no pun intended. Around hypervisors to really become more of an agnostic. I want to integrate, not just dictate kind of where you run your workloads.
Awesome. And you have this slide up, and so I'll ask kind of a fun question here. Yeah, because one little sidebar here. I actually came from Ardence and helped build the original PBS into XenApp integration. So, fun fact: the marketing guy was technical once. But I guess you got the Horizon 8 on the top, Horizon Cloud on the bottom. Is it fair to say the UIs are the same? So there's, the customer doesn't have to sit here and make a choice. They can do either or, and they get the same experience.
From a customer, like the end user perspective, yes, it is the same experience, right? They use the same client. They log into it. You do a lot of the same stuff, right? Whether, if you're SAML or if you want to use an IDP, right? To the end user, all they want to do is click on stuff and get stuff, right? They don't want to think that hard. And so, yeah, to the end user, it's very much the same thing, same client. In fact, we have features today where we deliver it with a single pane of glass. So we call it on-ramp, or one of the features is called on-ramp. And so that's the ability for, if I log into an on-premise kind of Horizon 8 system today, but I have stuff in the cloud, I can deliver it to the same client session where they don't have to see the difference. And then the other stuff that we just started doing, so everybody is aware, universal brokering. And I know we used to have universal brokering, and universal brokering V1 is nice, and we can talk about that later. But universal brokering version 2 is what we have today, and that really allows me to kind of collapse all of this so that it is just workload, right? I can have an end user click on a resource, and whether that resource be delivered on-prem or in the cloud, they only see one thing and they click on one thing. And so that way, if your on-premise goes down, the cloud picks up the slack. If the East US is down for whatever reason, on-prem can pick up the slack, and vice versa. And so we have a lot of organizations that are looking at the speech I make is that, do they have a $50 million data center that they're really super proud of? And they go, yes. I go, do you have another $50 million data center that you're super duper proud of? And I'm like, they go, yes. Great. And is that second $50 million data center, do you really hope that you never have to use that $50 million data center that you're super proud of? And they go, yeah, also that. And so it's really, we look at things like universal brokering and that kind of stuff as, our viewpoint of the world is on-prem will never go away. The cloud will never go away. But the world will end up being some flavor of hybrid. So how do I enable that kind of hybrid posture in a way that makes sense and doesn't kill the IT teams and gives the end users kind of that same consistent experience?
Awesome. And again, audience, if you have any questions at all, please ask.
I was gonna say, I love questions. I really do.
I don't want to bore you guys with all my questions, but I'll keep them coming until someone asks a good question. So this is probably for Jason and Josh. But can you guys talk about, like, if someone wants to migrate from, let's say, Platform X to you guys, what's the lift on that, and then maybe discuss, how this is different in packaging as far as the packaging goes. But like, what's the lift if I want to go from platform A to platform B, let's say, and you guys are platform B, obviously.
We have entire discussions around this, but the lift really isn't too bad. If you can recreate your images, and this is where we leverage our kind of our app volumes technology, which is how it's not app layering for those of you that are an app layering shop. Our viewpoint is I don't want to come up with new ways to help you make more images. I want to come up with new ways to help you make less images. And so app volumes is really how do I containerize an app and then attach it in real time to an image to deliver that application. And so the lift is really around just kind of repackaging those applications, which a lot of organizations, which, come from an app repackaging kind of pedigree, that's really not a very high lift at all. And so it's
Okay.
actually very, very kind of straightforward, right? But I'll let Jason add on to that as well.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Well, one of the things that as I've had these discussions with many customers, right? My focus and and I love how we're dovetailing into our modern workspace strategy mastermind here. But one of the aspects that we really talk about here is where do I see the biggest difference? When I'm looking at this, I look at it and say it's the UI, right? When you look at one UI from the other platform moving to any other new platform, that's gonna be a big difference. And then the other thing that you're going to find different are going to be the acronyms, right? We'll have different acronyms for different pieces, but ultimately, when you're looking at a matrice, right, of comparing multiple products together, there might be certain check boxes that are checked on any side, right, from any of the comparisons, but we're not seeing a holistic big difference for some of these things. I mean, even to the point whereas having the ability to remove an agent off of, and again, too, we always want to Josh's point, we always love to start fresh and clean, but at the end of the day, I've had customers who have literally just removed the agent communication off of their virtualized endpoint, whether it's a server or a desktop, right? And then taking that and throwing on the Horizon agent, and guess what? We've had solutions come up, work, and be able to start testing in a short amount of time. We're also looking at leveraging different components of AI, right, to be able to do some of those shifts from platform over to a different platform. So when you're thinking, oh my God, this is going to be a big services engagement, there's going to be a lot of time and effort that needs to go into all this piece just to get it up and going. When the reality is, it's not, right? Having the ability to have a similar cloud platform that we can spin up, get a customer up working on these pieces, for a POC/pilot to be able to see, oh, can this really do it? The answer is it can. And we're finding, and more customers are finding out that it is not a big massive project to do some of these things, but it is. I won't call it frictionless, but there is a pretty smooth ability to go from one to the other, and to be able to get that proof to maybe yourself, to the business, whoever would like to look and see it. But this isn't climbing Mount Everest, folks. This is a experience or a journey that is that we can help facilitate. From beginning to end with you, and to show that that this isn't something that we have to really worry about or sweat. So I love seeing that smooth ability to go from any platform to theirs.
Awesome. And I'm going to stop share because I think, Josh, you're going to want to share something in a second based on this question. So, one of the attendees, Jeremy, asked, hey, can you discuss options for SSO in the session? And I was kind of hoping someone was going to ask this because I actually stumbled across some of your awesome guided demos yesterday. I was putting a little collection together, and I'll put a link to one that I think the audience would benefit from in a moment. But he's asking about the use of Auth0, and they need to pass the token into a desktop application running on Azure VDA. Is something like that possible with y'all? So I don't know if you want to give like the quick high level on your, SSO, your identity platform, et cetera. But that's the question. And
Yep. And so, it's really obviously, do we support things like SSO into the actual session, right? Yes. We do that part and parcel every day. The bigger trick is going to be kind of the auth. If you're trying to pass all the way down to an application that is then running within that virtual session, that's going to be a slightly different kind of exercise, right? Because unless auth0 is in the Gina chain of that virtual session, then that's why things like for my healthcare folks, right? This is why things like Imprivata exist. You still need some way to get that token all the way through, but through our Workspace ONE access tooling and platforms, that's how we power the SSO side of the house. And so what access is, just to kind of give everybody the quick version of it, is that is kind of our one, it is our one kind of UI. It's think for my Citrix folks like storefront, but better. Because not only can we bring in our own applications, but we can bring in different SaaS applications. We can even bring in applications from that particular vendor, so to speak. And that's actually kind of step one of how we do these migrations, is that we get everybody over to Workspace ONE access. And so just to show that off real quick, this is what I use every single day, right? This is my Workspace ONE access. And as you can see, I have websites, I have virtual applications that are already in here. If I had other platforms of applications, they would be in here. And the important thing is that no matter what IDP that I need to authenticate with, whether that be Azure, Ping, Okta, Auth0, literally if it speaks SAML or OIDC, I can probably authenticate with it. And then I can kind of push that same identity into virtual apps. I can push that same identity into kind of SaaS applications. As I said, the biggest trick would just be that if you need an app within that session to use that same token, you would need something because we can authenticate using things like certificate-based authentication, true SSO, we call it, to get you into that desktop. But then you would need auth0 within the actual session to pick up that certificate and then seamlessly authenticate the user, which I know auth0 being identity and authentication as code certainly has that capability, but it would come down to the individual application as to whether it could.
Awesome. And Jeremy, FYI, so we are one of Okta Auth0's top development partners. So in conjunction with Willis and his team, I'm sure we could help you with a pretty solid solution. And then little sidebar here, I'm actually going to be offering the first, and you guys are hearing this fresh today, the first ever hands-on guided lab with Auth0 in about 3 weeks or so. So keep an eye out for that. That's going to take you through, the setup of Auth0. But one of the questions that gets answered is tokenization, things like that. So you definitely might want to check that out too as well, Jeremy. Cool. Audience, any other final questions? We're coming up to the top of the hour, and I want to be respectful of anybody's time. But Josh, anything else you might want to show? Oh, we got the fun question. So before I share my screen, Josh, I'm going to let you share your screen one last time. And we got the infamous, what is the licensing and pricing model for this product? So I figured we'd get that question. So
absolutely. So yep, let me hit the yield share button here one more time. And yeah. One moment, please. As I said, I promise I know how to use Zoom.
The good news is when I edit this, I can edit all these little gaps out so it looks nice and clean up on YouTube. So.
See, that's no fun. That's no fun at all. It's much more fun to just do it that way. So yes,
thank you for the question too.
Absolutely. So yes, just so everybody is aware, we try to keep our licensing model super simple. Things come in either named user flavors or concurrent user flavors. We support both. Most of my customers, honestly, usually look at things from a concurrent perspective, but we also support named users. And then it's really just, you have to ask the question of, do I want to publish just applications? Or do I want to publish desktops and applications? And if you want to publish desktops and applications, that's where we have the Horizon Universal on the right side. And the only difference between the one in the green and the one in the pink there is that Horizon Cloud on Azure, or it's also on AWS as well. I just want to run things just in the cloud, where the universal is truly universal. I want to run this on-prem, and then tomorrow I want to run it in the cloud, or I want to do both at the same time. It doesn't really matter to us, right? Run your workload where you want to run your workload, and we'll provide you the tools, the same set of tools and the same benefits no matter where you want to run it from. So that's why I said we keep it nice and simple. Whether it's just I just want to run apps, or I want to run desktops and apps, and then how many concurrent users or how many named users do you need?
Amazing. So nice and simple, and it's either A or B. So
it's either A or B.
Yeah.
And I will say this too, Pete, is that one of the nice things about their, the Horizon Universal, some of the thing is that compared to some of the competitors out there, this is going to be a very comparable SKU, which not only includes the ability to run virtual apps or VDI or in any cloud or any on-prem environment. It also includes a lot of components of features that help make it the delivery as an all-inclusive kind of piece, right? Leveraging the tools and the pieces that they have within the stack that you were showing earlier. So I'm a big fan of that. And also, too, one of the things I did want to mention about that, they also have licensing. They can, Josh, you may want to talk with us a little bit about the ability to run, unlimited cores and vCenters, right, with that potential
Yep.
SKU. So we know that, Broadcom can be a sensitive subject for some organizations, but will you talk about that real quick before we?
Sure. Yeah. So real quick, we have an offering. We bundle it with our Horizon Universals, whether you're apps or Horizon Universal. It's called VVF for VDI. And so that is really leveraging the same vSphere, vCenter that a lot of people are used to. And it gets licensed not by the core, but by the user. And so we have an OEM agreement, a long-term OEM agreement with Broadcom to be able to deliver that exclusively through our bundles. So yeah, we're seeing that as a great way for organizations to still have a hypervisor underneath that they're comfortable with without having to necessarily pay the price for some of those other solutions. So we're able to do that at a much cheaper price point as a per user than a per core thing.
And then there was an add-on question as well, single year or multi-year, and I'm guessing the answer is both, right?
Absolutely. I was gonna say anything between 1 and however many years you want, basically. We're happy to have that conversation.
And I'm gonna do a little plug for Jason. So there's two options here, and you'll see one on the screen here. This is a more, the one that's on our website today. It's called the Modern Workspace Strategy Mastermind, and this is a great way to level set what you have today. Sit down with Jason and his team, map out where you want to go, and then he can literally sit there and help you understand what you want to do, how long it's going to take you, and then what it could potentially cost you. Now, if you just want to get a kind of an apples to apples, you can also set up an hour session with Jason and his team just to do a mapping session of what you own today to how it compares on the on this side, and then what it could potentially cost as well. So there's going to be two follow-up actions that you could potentially take post session today. So if you do have any questions on, hey, where do I start, or hey, where do I go, we're going to help you with that. And don't hesitate to reply to the video email that comes out because I get them directly. And if there's a question, I'll forward it in to my team and Jason as well. So, and I'm going to do one final call. If you have any final questions to throw into the chat, please do to the Q&A. That way, if I can't get to it, we'll answer it as part of the follow-up. And then as far as the different assets, I will be sharing the recording. So if you want to forward it on to folks, it will be a little bit condensed because we'll take out some of the pauses and the polling and things like that. So if you want to share it with other team members, please do. And coming up next in the next few weeks, we're gonna have we have 3 sessions slated, and I actually got one that's gonna be a surprise session. I'm still working through the details of that in June. But I started a new series. It's called In the Lab Demo, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm gonna focus on you get on, you see a demo, and that's it. And we're gonna kick that off in 2 weeks with our friends over at Red Canary, and they're going to get on and they're going to talk about their Zscaler integration because they're a Zscaler company now, and they're going to be talking about how they're integrating with Zscaler and becoming one big happy family. And I'm going to kick it off with that demo. And then in June, I got a special guest coming on for that series as well. And I'm just locking down all the final details, and you'll see a email coming out for that. And then my next in the labs, or I got one coming up with Nutanix. We're going to focus on how they're working with AI, enabling AI on premises, things like that. And then we're going to have our friends in June from Abnormal talking about how they're protecting humans through AI and their threat protection platform. So, and as always, if you are a registrant of now or past webinars, you're in what's called my Alchemy Insiders, you'll just get a direct invite via the calendar. And I usually filter you out of all the invite emails that I send out broader. So you just get the one invite, and then you can just click the link and You don't have to worry about missing any of the future webinars that we have. All right, and as always, I always like to close out with final thoughts. So I'll start with Josh today. Josh, any final thoughts you want to leave with the audience?
As I said, we're excited about where we're going, and we're excited to help our customers. We're getting great customer feedback, and we're looking forward to continuing it.
Awesome. And Jason, any final thoughts you want to leave with the customers? And you got to let your hair down. You look like Fabio usually.
Well, one of these times you'll get to see the hair flowing down. But no, my final thing is this: is that one, for those folks who have been, worked with other vendors for many years, built their careers off of it, I just want you to know it's not a scary journey. This is a journey that is, I think, is going to make it a lot less painless, moving forward and in the future. And let's let the motions, the intelligence, the AI, and the pieces that we have today. Let's make this a painless journey. So for all those who are truly interested in exploring this, please don't hesitate to reach out. I really want y'all to understand that this is a safe journey and one that is not fraught with perils and all sorts of bad things that can come out. So just let us know, and looking forward to speaking with you all about this in the future.
Amazing. And gentlemen, thanks for jumping in today and joining us. I know you're very busy, and I know the audience appreciates it well. And with that, we're going to close out today's session. And as I always say, have a great day, everybody. Thanks for jumping in. Hope to see you in the future sessions. And as always,